This is Access Houston on 97.9 The Box.
Good Sunday morning. You're listening to Access Houston. I'm your host, KG Smooth, welcoming some lovely, vivacious women who are trying to make a change in the community. I had the honor of meeting these women at my good sister, cousin, friend, JJ on the mic, who had The Gathering. And it was also a release for her new book, Respecting My Crown. But she also had a panel, and they were talking about emotional abuse and how to point out a narcissist. And so after the event, just talking to the ladies that were there, because it was for women. I was the only male there besides the videographer. And so I want to welcome the founders of Melanin Mental Health, the lovely Eboni Harris, who is a relationship therapist and entrepreneur.
Yes.
Good morning. And the lovely Eliza Boquin.
Yes.
She is the founder of Melanin Mental Health, and she's also a sex therapist and entrepreneur. Thank you, ladies, for coming on
Thank you
the
so
program.
much for having us.
Thank
Man.
you. We so appreciate you inviting us to be here.
Oh man, well I had to, especially once you guys told me about the organization and what it is that you all do, and that July is
Minority
Mental
Mental
Health
Health Month.
Yes.
That's right.
Did not know that. So as we wrap up July,
Yes.
glad to have you ladies on. Tell us about Melanin and Mental Health. How did it start?
Yes. So I'm a psychotherapist in private practice. And a big reason why people will contact me is because they see somebody that looks like them. And so I began following Eboni on social media. She was great. I was like, who is this therapist? I want to meet her. We did lunch, and the conversation was, where are all the other Black and brown therapists? And so it just kind of grew from there. I'd started kind of this social media of Melanin and Mental Health kind of became this online kind of campaign to promote mental health awareness in Black and Latinx communities, but to have this conversation in a way that's not bogged down with psychology jargon.
Sure.
Right.
And so we were talking and we were basically like, get your friends to get with my friends. We'll have a happy hour and meet some other therapists. And we were so surprised at that outcome. By then we'd had a good social media following. Eboni put it on Facebook, and then from there,
We just started having regular events. So the first event, like she said, we expected it to be just like a few of her therapist friends, a few of my therapist friends. We just put it on social media like, hey, if y'all want to come out and meet us, cool. And we had about 30 therapists show up.
Wow.
And it was just
exactly
in a Facebook group, and that was it. And so we were like, oh, and then through the conversation there, everybody introducing themselves, learning about different specialties and what people are doing. Everybody was like, we want to, stay in touch. We want to keep getting to know other therapists so that we can refer out, so that when people call us and say, well, I want a Black therapist, but I don't work with kids, I can have someone to send them to. And so from there, we started just doing regular happy hours and meeting the different therapists here, and it quickly grew from that via social media, which Eliza does the social media and is popping and then with our events we got a lot of traction going, so we decided like, okay, how do we keep this going and how do we continue to make a difference within our communities and connect with other therapists?
Well, I'm so glad that you did.
Thank you.
And I'm so glad that we went, because everybody nowadays, everybody's so woke.
Right.
Everybody's so woke that they sleep.
right,
Okay?
right,
Definitely.
You know what I'm saying?
that's-
and with this, I'm so woke movement comes mental health awareness.
Absolutely.
And people are on that. And that is great that people of color are on that, because, for decades, for years,
Right.
hundreds of, we were always told, oh, therapy, that's something for white folks.
Right.
You go, you pray about it, things, it'll be okay.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, God did put people on this
Right.
planet with certain intellectual levels to help you get through,
Exactly.
some
Right.
things. And so I'm glad that we as a Black community, in the Black and brown community, are finally opening up and realizing the healing that is in therapy, even just talk therapy. So I'm just going to speak for myself. Going through something a couple of years ago, and when I finally talked to a friend of mine and said it out loud,
Right.
I felt so much better.
Right.
You feel relief.
It's
You
a weight.
feel
just
relief.
even letting it go. Yeah.
Just to say it out loud, it was like, Oh, wow. So
Yeah.
the important, can we please talk about the importance of seeing someone, and when should one see a therapist? Any can tackle
I
that.
kind of want to go back to what you said
Okay.
about it being for white people. This is something that we've been talking about with another therapist, Dr. Manuel,
Sure.
who's based in Austin, and just talking about the idea that therapy is actually ours. And if you look back in our cultural history, we use talk and community and those things to help us heal.
So shut up. So here is another practice that was originated
that was
by.
ours. Yes, that's what Dr. Manuel. He blew our mind when he made that statement.
Yes.
We were
You
doing,
are-
and
Stop
said,
lying to me.
Right.
It is ours.
And said therapy is ours. And this idea that we've always gathered in communities in a tribal way, in a community way, where there was somebody that you would go to seek, you know, that counseling,
that healing.
And so it's something that we've been doing. It's like it's in our DNA, right? Our grandmothers, grandfathers, and ancestors have been doing it forever. We just been disconnected from it.
Modern therapy was not created for us.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been a part of us. And so hearing that and having that conversation with him a few times has really kind of shifted even the way we talk about it.
Right.
Sure.
Because now
Well,
it's
you
not
just
about,
shifted my whole
Right.
just in that. I mean, my way of thinking about it has shifted.
Exactly. So at this point, we're just reconnecting to something that was
Right.
already there.
Yeah.
Not starting something brand new.
Right.
And so that's a whole different discovery and a different way of looking at mental health in minority communities. Right.
Yeah.
But so
And
why is it needed?
Yeah, why is it needed? And that's simply because, you know, we talk about this all the time. You know, who benefits from us not healing?
Right.
Because it's not us, right? There's somebody that benefits from us not examining our traumas, not healing from our traumas, not healing from our wounds, or just the fact, like you said, that little bit of relief that you felt about something you were going through. Well, who benefits when you're not relieved? It's not us.
It's not us. Yeah.
It's not us. And so we need this in order for our communities to continue to grow, to continue to just be at our best. But it is that distrust factor that we're trying to address in the way that we speak about it. And, you know, we have a podcast called Between Sessions, and we say, you know, we're two brown chicks changing the face of therapy on both sides of the couch. And what we mean by that is, what are the therapists that look like when you go to see them? And who are we getting in that on that therapy couch is really the movement that we're about.
I love that. And I need to be a part of that movement.
Well, you are now.
Well, yeah. But no, I mean, like, for real, like, sit down and talk. JJ has suggested that to me. So I'm going to share this with you all, and I'm going to go through the process, and you too, Houston family. So my dad had died the beginning of May. We had an estranged relationship. You know, he wasn't there. And he was in and out of my life like a Gap Band record. I mean, and then, you know, the last time when I tried to link up with him was last August. Actually, it was during Harvey, because I had flew home. My brothers had threw a fight party, because that was the Mayweather-McGregor fight that weekend that Harvey hit. So I had flew home because my brothers were throwing a fight party, and then ended up being stuck home for 9 days.
Right.
And reached out to my father, like, yo, you know, I'm here, I've been here, you know, just let's link up. We were supposed to, but we never did. He canceled on me 3 times, you know. And then after, like, as I was literally, like, after the first 2 times, I was just like, okay. And then that Friday when we were supposed to meet, like, I'm driving to where we were supposed to meet, and as I'm on the way there, he hits me with the call, like, oh. And then I was just like, I'm done. I started getting mad at myself. Like, why do you keep reaching out to this man to have this relationship? Like, it's been the same thing since he entered your life when you was, you know, 11, 12, however old I was when I first met him. And so when I got the news about him not being well, they had to transport him to the hospital. He was in ICU. I was just like, oh, like, wow, how sad. It was just like I just heard that Barbara Bush had died, because Barbara Bush really had just passed. And so I get this news about my dad, and it was just like
disconnected.
Totally.
Yeah.
So as I'm talking to my brother about it, I had to look at myself. I was like, well, wait. Well, what is going on with you that you had the reaction or non-reaction that you did when you got this news.
Right.
And so I started to psychoanalyze myself as to, what's
Yeah.
wrong. And then all of these thoughts and emotions started coming down because that whole side of the family, him and that whole side, I've done pretty well without them being around.
Right.
But for whatever reason, things just started coming down on me in my mind. Like, why weren't, they there during this? Why didn't I have, summers in Georgia like the rest of the grandkids? Like, why this, why that? And I was like, why all of a sudden do I care?
Right. Why is it coming up now?
Yeah. And so I was angry.
Yeah.
And throughout that whole process, I was angry. Like
Right.
I was so mad.
Yeah.
Because I'm getting these calls about him, and then especially once I fly back home to Dayton and going to the funeral and hearing what he was to everyone else,
right.
and then here
Right.
you got a whole damn basketball team
Right.
of kids who
Yeah.
you didn't do anything
Right.
with
Right,
us. So
right.
I was really upset,
Yeah.
and I carried that there, but I knew that I had to let all of this out, and that I had to confront that side of the family, have the questions answered, all of that.
Yeah.
And I did it. I attacked everything head on. I was totally honest with the family, and it was a real Ayanna fix my life moment in the living room when it all happened. But I felt so relieved. Unfortunately, what I needed to hear, I didn't get from the person that I needed to because he's dead.
Yeah.
My other grandmother, after getting the history of what's going on that side of the family, because everything has context,
Of course.
I was like, all right, I can't mess with you because you can't even face your own stuff. So how can I even expect you to apologize to me?
Right.
And so after all of that, like it was a relief. I
Yeah.
came back because had I not done that, had I left Houston, went home to Dayton, Ohio, went to this funeral and not attack that head on,
Right.
I would not be the same man. I would have
Right.
came back here. I still would have been mad. Like no
Right.
one would have
Right.
recognized me.
Yeah.
And so I'm saying all of that to say it is very important to get out what it is that you said, regardless of whatever the repercussions were. Because even after that dinner, I had dinner with my other cousins, and they were like, "Wow, Chris, my real name is Chris. That's what the KG is, Chris Green." So my cousins were like, "Wow, Chris, like that was amazing. We had never seen anything like that. For you to be so open and honest and raw and vulnerable, that was astonishing." And I'm thinking I'm like, well, wow, thanks. But in my mind, I'm just like, well, that's how I attack everything in life,
Right.
Head on.
Right.
Head on. But that anger that I was dealing with, and so with that, JJ was like, yo, that's good that you did all that, but I still want you.
Right.
I still want you to sit down
Yeah.
and talk to, some folks. And I feel that I do.
Yeah.
Because it was a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think that's the thing about therapy is, yes, you get to go in there and you get to verbalize maybe some of this, but what therapists do is we offer you a process, right? Like we create the space for you to have that process, so it's not just talking, because sometimes people will say, well, I could just talk to my friends, right? And so we are trained to help ask certain questions that are going to be thought-provoking for you, that are going to help you to continue to help you process some of this grief, because that's
That's what it is.
that's what it
was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's going to probably, grief is this, it's not like a beginning and an end to it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably why JJ is saying like, hey, because grief will be triggered at different times.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
kind of Saturday, but not in the way that one may think. So I had a remote on the north side, and I'm driving. I'm on 610, and I saw my dad was a musician. He was supposed to be the next big thing, like next to Prince. It was supposed to be Rick James, Prince, and then my dad.
Okay.
But his diva antics, he messed up the whole thing because of some other stuff. But anyway, a song came on that he had co-written, and I was like, oh wow, like, and I started thinking about him. But then I had to remind myself that he was dead.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, dang. Like, and I don't know what that meant. Like, wow, like he really was that absent that you have to remind yourself that, yo, your father is dead, or is it a subconscious way of grieving? Like, I don't know.
Go ahead.
It's definitely a normal part of grieving.
Right.
Whether they were around or not, whoever it was, it's still, they were a part of your life.
Right.
And so the process of they're not here anymore, it takes time to even understand,
Right.
and to even, because you're not going to think about it every day.
Right.
And then when it comes up, it's like, oh yeah, this is a situation where maybe I would have reached out, or this is, and it's like, oh, I can't. Like, that's a
Right.
normal like part of the process. So whether absent or not, it's still kind of like that, getting used to the fact that this person is no longer around.
Right.
It takes time to even recognize sometimes.
Well, and I think that's the thing about grief, is it's a loss. And so we most often associate it when somebody passes. But anytime there's any type of loss, even when you opt for that loss,
Right.
I always tell people, like, the best way you can think of it is, you know, like when you were going to graduate high school and you're like, yeah, I can't wait to get out of here. But then at the same time, you're like, oh, but I'm kind of sad too, because there's a loss, right? There's a change. And so anytime that you're kind of triggered, also, like, if there's other losses in your life, that can bring up some of the grief. And it can be bringing up some of the grief of not having the type of father that you longed for, right? Like,
Right.
that's part of the grief also sometimes.
That's true. You're listening to Access Houston. We're talking to Eboni Harris and Eliza Boquin.
Boquin. Yes, you got it.
Eliza Boquin from Melanin and Mental Health. So what are some of the reasons why Black and brown people don't go to therapy?
So many.
They can't afford it. They don't know about it,
It's-
or finding the right one.
We had a whole series on this.
Yes. So part of it is the untrusting of people outside of our communities or outside of the family.
Oh, please. People get on Facebook all the time and tell their business to get advice for people whose own lives, they ain't even got their own lives together.
But
So
that is
if that's
something
their
that
argument,
we have
miss me.
learned growing up. Like,
Yeah.
even though we do it, and yes, social media now has become this whole thing.
Oh, man.
But growing up, we often have heard, like, what happens in the house stays in the house, right?
Indeed.
You don't go to school and tell your teacher about what we have going on here and things like that. So that's a part of just that conditioning of
Not trusting the
not
system.
trusting the system. And so I've heard people tell me, even when we're in therapy, they're in therapy with me, and they'll say, like, well, I'm not going to tell you that because I don't want you to call CPS on me. And I'm like, wait, what?
Right.
Like, because they think that you are going to report them to
Yeah.
somebody. You're going to lock me up. You're going to call CPS. You're going to call the police. You're
Right.
going to send me to a hospital. Like, you're here to report on
Right.
me as opposed to help me. And so I think that's the mindset of, like, you're a part of the system.
Right.
You're
You're
part
a
of
part
the
of the
system.
You're a part
Yeah.
of the system.
Yeah,
Yes.
so that's one reason.
The other reason is because the idea that they're not Black and brown therapists, right? That they're not going to be able to relate to them. And the reality is, there's not enough of us, but there are a lot of us. You know, that's one of the things that we, part of Melanin and Mental Health was creating a hub of information for our communities. And part of that hub, you know, with our website, is having an online directory where, you know, it's a national directory. You go on there, you type in your city, who are the therapists in your city, and because we want to be able on some level to relate to who we're talking to, who we're sharing our vulnerabilities, our traumas, our deepest, you know, memories that we don't share with anybody sometimes.
Yeah.
Right. I also
indeed.
think it goes to that strength. You know, it's not that bad. Thinking that you go to therapy when
It's not that bad.
You're-
That's
you're
the Black
talking
woman
to
syndrome
somebody.
right there. It's not that bad.
Yes. I
It's
can
not that
handle
bad.
it. I can deal with it.
Yeah. And you all can, but you also
don't
need
have
some
to.
help. Yeah.
We don't have to.
Right,
And
right.
How much better could we be if we did let go of some of that stuff? But that's a big part of it. Is just like, well, I'm not that bad. Like,
Right.
people that go to therapy are crazy,
Right.
Or whatever. And understanding that therapy is just a tool, another tool, just like cough medicine, just like whatever. Like,
Going
it's
to the
something.
gym.
Going to the gym.
Yeah.
It's something to help you do better. It's something to help you feel better, and that's all. So it's not for. I tell people a lot of times, like, when I work with couples a lot, and so I tend to get couples that are like, we are about to go to the lawyers. Well, let's try therapy first, right? Like we're deciding we're going to get a divorce. We're going to come to therapy first. And so
if you can't help us, then then
we're going to this is the last resort, as opposed to coming in the beginning and getting the tools in the beginning, or when things are small. Because it's a lot easier for me to help you when the things are small, as opposed to when they've grown legs and run away. Where we got to chase it down first and then try to figure out what the problem is. So we are all about like preventative. Like we don't want you to come once it gets so bad that I can no longer function. How do we make sure you don't get to that place?
You don't have to be in crisis.
You don't have to be in crisis.
Therapy.
Exactly.
You could just, you may be coming in because you need maybe some support in that time, but then it can be something that you use as maintenance, right? Like you don't wait for the car to break down. You take it, you get tires rotated. You
hear the brakes squeaking.
Exactly.
You know, the person.
Not waiting
Before
until you can't break.
Right, until you can't break. Right.
Call
And
the
then,
AAA.
the car won't stop.
or you done ran into the back of somebody now.
Right. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's just we have this idea of what therapy looks like. Oh, you're going to be sitting there with somebody, writing down, and it's really about what you were referring to, which when you were able to relieve yourself, it was that connection with another human, right? That could meet you with empathy, could meet you with compassion. And so we do that, but it's also, again, this process so that you don't need us. Right. Ebony and I are very much on that same, we don't want you to be in therapy forever.
Right. It's not our goal. Our goal is not to keep clients forever. We want to give you the tools you need
in order to
release
function.
you, and if you need to come back, we're here
Yeah.
to help you through with that, whatever else you need at that point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're listening to Access Houston, talking to Eliza Boquin and Eboni Harris from Melanin and Mental Health. Is there a why am I having a senior moment right now?
Because we talk about a lot.
My
All kind of
question,
emotions are coming out.
I know all kind of stuff. You all are changing the face
Of
therapy.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Of the couch.
Yeah, on both sides of the. So when you say that, what does that mean on both sides of the couch?
It means, so when you go to therapy, you got the couch, right? And who's showing up on the couch? Who are the clients on the couch? And who's the person on the other side of the couch facilitating that process? So we are changing the face of therapy. The therapists you see, the clients you see, the people you get in these grad schools wanting to be a therapist.
Nice. Right? I'm anxious to know. I thought I was going to be a psychology major at one point because I'm fascinated by human behavior. And I actually still have my Psych 101 book. It's on my bookshelf. It's so funny. But ended up being an English major. But I've always, wondered, and as I said, just been fascinated by human behavior. What was it with you two that wanted to make you all get into psychology?
Definitely what you said, just that interest in why. I was always curious as to like why are me and my siblings raised in the same household but are completely different, right? Why did I grow up in this neighborhood but I went in this direction and other people went in that direction? Why do people make certain decisions in relationships? That's a big one. I'm a relationship therapist. So I was always curious about like why, what led to it. And I think I also did have a little bit of that, people want to talk to me. I'm an introvert. And so I am quiet, but I'm introspective. Right. And so when people would talk to me, I would be able to give feedback. And so, that was always a thing, but it was because I'm always asking the question why. I'm always curious as to like, there has to be more to the story. Like your behavior today is not just based on what's happening today. It has to be based on things that have happened before.
Everything has a point of origin.
Exactly. And so I think that curiosity was just always there, and it just was a natural fit. Like I thought I was going to be an engineer, thought I was going to be an actress, introvert. Yeah, I thought I was going to be an actress.
I was just about to say, but you're an introvert though. For real, Ebony?
She's the most outgoing introvert.
I'm good on the stage. This is a stage.
Okay.
If I'm not on stage, I can't do anything. So I thought I was going to do all these paths, but it always went back to just my curiosity about why people do this. And so I was like, why fight that? Like, just go to that. My parents really wanted me to be an engineer because they were like, you make money real quick. Like, and I was like, I want to talk to people. I want to get to know people. I want to, learn help as many people as I can and have those interactions to really understand human behavior. And it gives me so much perspective in all other areas of life.
Oh, I'm sure.
As far as like anything from politics to religion to love to sex to all of those things. And so I love it. I love it.
Yeah. Eliza?
Yeah, it was that also. It was wanting to know people's story. I think, I was that one girl that, she would see the bad boy in class. And it was like, I wonder why is he hurting? Who hurt you? Who hurt you? Right? And it was that. It was just this understanding that there's probably more to the story.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know what the story was.
That's how I felt about the bully.
The bully. Yeah,
The person that, the actual bully.
Yeah.
Like, yo, what is going on with you
who
in your
hurt
life that
you?
you got,
Right.
Because hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it was that just also kind of being that person that, people just kind of would naturally ask for maybe some advice or what have you. And one of the biggest things that I work around with, because I also work with relationships and I also specialize in issues around sexuality. And that was because there's so much shame that people carry, right? And so when we have shame, it shows up in our life. It blocks us from the ability to have connections, to just live our life the way that we want to live it. And helping people to overcome that's just, for me, it's like the biggest payoff.
Indeed. I like that. I like that a lot. So how can people find you and follow you? They may be listening. They may want to, hey, let me hit up Eboni, or let me hit up Eliza.
So we have two brands. We have our personal practices, and then we have Melanin Mental Health. So you can find me across social media, Eboni Harris, Maeboni, Harris, Ma. That's all social media platforms, or eboniharris.com. I also have a podcast called Room for Relations, where we discuss everything from the first date to the last orgasm. So that's where you can find me personally,
right?
And Eliza. And
so my private practice is trswc.com. You can find me on social media. My name, ELIZAGBOQUIN, and I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. And then you can find Melanin Mental Health. Go to our website, melaninmentalhealth.com, and we have a blog, we have resources, we have the directory, we have a Between Sessions podcast. That's our podcast where we record live on Facebook every Wednesday at 11 a.m. And we're on all the social medias. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Melanin and Mental Health for Instagram and Facebook. Twitter is Melanin Health because
they don't like long names.
They don't like long names.
No, that's right. For those who are listening, thank you for that. For those, what little small tip can those at home do to help, I don't know, relax their mind, or maybe try to ease some of the anxiety that they may be having about a certain situation? Right. Like what would be the textbook psychology 101 or the Melanin and Mental Health way of just do this to woosah real quick?
Well, self-care is everything. And today is International Self-Care Day. Did you know?
I did not know.
They got a day for everything. Jesus, I don't remember it being like this like 5 years ago.
Everything has a day.
Everything has a day.
Yeah.
Well, and self-care is really about awareness.
Okay.
So the more aware you can become of your needs, and let's start with the basic ones. Am I hungry? Am I tired? Do I need fun? Just basic awareness of what your needs are. Start there. And then something that it sounds so simplistic, but your breath, breathing, slowing down your breathing. And the reason why this is as powerful as it is because it gives the cue to our body that you're not in danger. Right? When we're triggered by something, be it anxiety or what have you, we start to kind of breathe quickly, right? So your brain is saying, there's danger, there's danger. And so it's just feeding, right, like that anxiety. So when you take the time to breathe, what it's telling your body is, okay, I'm safe in this moment.
Right.
I'm safe. Your brain says, okay, so I don't have to give you more of this adrenaline to solve this problem. So as simple as breathing sounds, it's very powerful. Very
major
powerful.
Key alert.
And don't be afraid to seek out support. Don't be afraid to seek out support. If you're interested in therapy, you can call people up. You can shop around for your therapist.
Right.
Eboni has given some great tips before on how to find a therapist, but
I would know that because I'm like, man, do I call up one of you two? Do I call up the young lady, JJ's therapist who was at the event on that? Robbie.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, what do I do?
Exactly.
Where do I go?
It can be difficult, especially which is kind of why we started the website, is because it was kind of like we want to reduce the stigma, right? We want to get people comfortable. But then what? You know, where do they go after that? One of the first things I always say is, if you feel comfortable, is to ask around. Your friends have been to therapy, even if they're not talking about it. They probably have been to therapy. So that's the first place, is to try to find a recommendation, whether that's through friends, your doctor, whoever. But also, you know, online is always great. Melanin Mental Health has a directory. Therapy for Black Girls is a really good directory. Psychology Today is the biggest directory. It's a little harder to sift if you're looking for a brown or Black therapist, though. And checking with your insurance. Most people, if you have insurance, do you have some type of mental health coverage? A lot of people don't even know that. They don't even recognize that they have that. EAP benefits, where you can go and have like 4 or 5 sessions for free. You have these options. It's just some people just don't know where to start.
Yeah.
That's what's
and find the part that's helpful in kind of calling a therapist up and seeing if they'll even talk to you prior to the session is because your connection with that therapist
is
vital.
Key. Yeah.
It's
paramount.
Key because somebody can have a lot of accolades. They could be great for somebody else, but you get in front of them, you're like, I'm just not vibing with this person.
And that's
and you have to get the most out of the process. You have to have that connection with.
I was
going
to mention that. If you know if the vibe is right. Do I feel comfortable enough? Like, do they seem like they would genuinely be interested instead of just sitting here for this hour to take my money?
Exactly. And you can tell that usually with the phone conversation. If you say, like, do you do consultations? Can I ask you a few questions? See how they react to you, and that could give you a lot of information about how they would be as a therapist. Maybe not 100%.
No, but both of us offer free consultations as part of, because the therapist also has to be able to know if they can support you.
Right.
Sure.
Right? Like, so what is it you're coming in to get some support around?
Exactly.
And this is how I would approach it. Or, you're not going to have deep detail, but you're going to get an idea. And like I said, more than anything, you're going to get a feel for that person's personality.
Yeah. Indeed. So the website again,
melaninandmentalhealth.com.
Yes.
Go check them out.
Please.
Eboni Harris, Eliza Boquin. Thank you so much for coming on. Y'all got to come back, because, like,
please tell us.
I'm like, wow, like the 24 has been up. Like, I'm past my time. But this was so amazing. You guys have to come back.
Yes,
we will.
Anytime.
Well, let's put it on the.
I'm gonna hold that.
Get you on the calendar.
Okay. How about that? Thank you all so much.
All right, thank
you.
Thank you for listening to Access Houston.
We'll be back with more Access Houston on 97.9 The Box.